If your grandma had balls, she would be called grandpa. That beautiful, profound saying comes from my home country, Montenegro. But it also summarizes philosophy and psychology developed on the other side of the world, in Japan. More precisely, it summarizes the core message of Morita therapy, also known as Japanese psychology of action, a school of psychotherapy developed to help people who are dealing with anxiety based disorders and self sabotaging thought patterns, preventing them from engaging in life more fully. So, allow me to explain how this Montenegrin saying describes and summarizes the core message of Morita therapy. Let's repeat once again. If your grandma had balls, she would be called grandpa. I know this might be offensive to some people nowadays, but allow me to expand on it. That's just not the case, right? Your grandma is grandma. She doesn't have balls, so she cannot be grandpa. We use this saying when wanting to kind of take a jab at people who are in conflict with reality, with people who are trying to say that if things were different, then my life would be different. If things were different, then I would do this differently. If things were different, if circumstances of my life were different, then this aspect of myself or this action that I've executed in this way or this thing that I've done in that way would be different. But that's not the case. You have your reality that you're experiencing right now. So maybe you've made that mistake. Maybe you're experiencing this internal discomfort. Maybe things are not going the way that you want them to go. And that's the way it is. So it's absolutely pointless for you to explain to yourself or to me or to anyone else that if this was different, then that would be different. So we kind of ridicule those people by saying, yeah, if grandma had balls, she would be called grandpa. I remember when I was told that the first time when I was a kid. And again, I understand now some people might think, wow, what a way to talk to kids. What kind of message is that sending? Especially nowadays, because I understand that maybe in a decade or two, this metaphor will make no sense because of certain developments in terms of how humans view themselves. But let me not go in that direction. Let grandmas and grandpas of the future be what they want to be. I will not be the judge of that. But I think for most of you listening, you know that grandma is grandma and she doesn't have balls. So, with that being said, what the saying or the metaphor, this metaphor is describing, it's describing the pointlessness of being in conflict with reality, or the pointlessness of trying to make the current circumstances or wanting the current circumstances to be different in order for our actions to be different. Now let me put it in Japanese framework, more I would say probably because it's Japanese, it has to be more popular, right? It has to be probably more respected. Everyone wants to be like the Japanese. We all admire their culture and their heritage. So let's put the barbaric Montenegrin metaphor in noble Zen Japanese framework. The Japanese call it in Japanese. It's called, I believe, Shiso no Mujun. And for anyone who is listening and who has knowledge in Japanese language, apologies for my bad pronunciation. But what Shiso no Mujun describes in Morita therapy is basically, again, conflict with reality. So, because Morita therapy was developed to help people who are dealing with anxiety-based disorders and inner self-sabotaging patterns, this conflict with reality is usually presented or seen in examples like, if I wasn't insecure, then I would give that presentation. If I wasn't struggling with social anxiety, then I would meet more people and make more connections. Well, let me go back to a less glamorous metaphor. If grandma had balls, she would be called grandpa. Meaning, currently you are insecure. That's the current reality of your life. Subjective reality of how you're experiencing life is that you are dealing with insecurity. So if I wasn't insecure, then I would give that presentation is conflict with reality. If I wasn't struggling with social anxiety, then I would meet more people. It is conflict with reality. And what Morita therapy proposes is not to solve your symptoms and then help you start living. It's to help you start living despite the symptoms. Let me repeat that, because for Western approaches to mental health, this is almost unheard of. Let's start living life despite symptoms, rather than work almost endlessly, or in some situations, definitely endlessly, on fixing ourselves as if we were broken, and then at some point in the future, that maybe will never come, we will start living our lives. Symptoms here meaning insecurity, anxiety, imposter syndrome, lack of motivation, depression, whatever is going on inside that is preventing us from engaging in life. How this looks, how does this look in real life? It looks like this, where I am approaching that person, whether it's a romantic interest or let's say a guy at a workout park that I would like to take advice from, or in a co-working space during the break, I want to approach someone who seems like he's doing something similar to me, and I could use developing a connection with that person. When I'm experiencing increased heart rate, when I'm experiencing my palms getting sweaty because I'm a socially anxious person, me proceeding to engage in the action despite the symptoms and accepting that this is the current reality of my life. And keep in mind, this is different from CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and behavioral therapies, with all respect for the benefit that they bring. It's different because the goal isn't gradual exposure in order to become better at whatever the thing is. So I'm not saying, okay, I'm going to approach this person despite my symptoms because I'm gradually going to get better. No, there is zero expectations at me getting better. Zero expectations. Getting better at approaching people, getting better at giving presentations. Or let me correct, of course, if a skill is involved, okay, giving presentations, I can expect to get better at that. But there is zero expectations of me getting better in the sense of not experiencing the symptoms anymore. So if I'm someone who gets that increased heart rate and his palms sweaty when wanting to approach someone, with the philosophy of Morita therapy, I am still going to approach the person not because after 5 approaches, after putting in the reps, I'm going to stop having the increased heart rate and sweaty palms. I'm not doing it for that purpose. I'm doing it for the purpose of engaging in my life. And engaging in my life despite symptoms. So I'm accepting the current reality of my life and not expecting my actions to remove the symptoms. Now, this doesn't mean that myself or Morita therapy or this whole message is trying to tell you that you will never stop experiencing the symptoms. It's not about telling you, okay, if you're now feeling insecure, you will forever be insecure to that same extent. That's not the message. But the message is to accept it fully and engage in life despite the symptom, and slightly different than Western behavioral therapies, engage in life despite the symptom, not counting that action will over time reduce the symptom, but counting on what? Counting on life fulfillment. Because at the end of the day, this is the offer that you need to imagine. Create that statement of conflict reality, of a conflict with reality that you have. So if I wasn't fill in the blank, if I wasn't experiencing this internal barrier, then I would fill in the blank. In what way would you live your life more fully? So that's your statement of a conflict with reality. Here is now the imaginary offer that you have to accept, or at least first think about it. If you could accept a deal where you're able to do the thing at the end of the statement. So if I wasn't fill in the blank, then I would fill in the blank. If you were able to do the thing at the end of the statement while still experiencing the symptom at the beginning of the statement, would you make that deal? So let's say that my statement of a conflict with reality is, if I wasn't struggling with imposter syndrome, then I would write a book. Now the question is, what is more important for me? To write the book or to not experience imposter syndrome? To put that in the structure of the offer. If I was giving an offer, a deal, that I will write a book while experiencing imposter syndrome the whole way throughout the process, would I accept that deal? And the answer for me is yes, every single time. And by the way, this is just an example, because at this point in my life, I don't need to anymore make those negotiations, because the philosophy of Morita therapy has changed my life. And it's been years now that I've been studying it for this exact reason. And I've fully accepted this. Not accepted Morita therapy as a religion, or as some people accept Stoicism, like it's the ultimate answer to all of life's questions. But this part of Morita therapy, how to deal with symptoms. So I'm just giving you an example. You need to come up with your example and say, okay, what is more important for me? To not experience the symptom, or to do the thing that I want to do? If you're able to answer yes, I will sign that contract to still experience the symptom, to still experience social anxiety, but meet new people despite it, then you quite literally can do that. That's a real offer that is out there for you. It's just not that I'm going to send you a contract via mail, or no one from Morita Therapy Association is going to send you that contract. It's something that you need to acknowledge and start engaging in your life. On the other side, if you say, no, the number one thing for me is to get rid of the symptoms, and then I will start doing the things, well, good luck with that. That's all that I can say. Good luck with that, because you are in for a rough existence. I mean, we are all in for a rough existence, but you are in for an existence that's not going to be very fulfilling if you think that the number one priority is to get rid of the symptoms before starting to live your life. But if you did decide to say yes and make the deal to live your life despite the symptoms, and even, even being okay that the symptoms will never go away, if that's the case, then let's start with direct action. Direct action is another concept from Morita therapy. So you're going to identify the simplest action with least resistance, not just one, not now to determine one and to keep that, but occasionally, or rather regularly in your life, you're going to identify, okay, what is now, and I'm now making this gesture like I'm scanning the room, because that's actually how you identify direct action, because it's somewhere in your surroundings usually. What is the simplest, most direct, hence the name, and the action with lowest barrier that I can engage in right now? Why does this make sense? Because you will be experiencing those inner barriers. You will be experiencing those symptoms, and it's not as if you can always engage in the most impressive action or the most desired action. So you're going to train your confidence, and you're going to reaffirm your ability to take action despite the symptoms. So again, to put, to make it relevant with a personal example, although I'm always asking you to think of your examples. If my anxiety is preventing me, or not preventing me, if my anxiety stands like a barrier that could potentially prevent me from writing, okay, I'm going to write later today, but first let me just scan in my environment while I'm experiencing anxiety. Let me scan my environment, and let me fold these towels that are here. You cannot see them, but these towels that are here, and let me sort out my stuff. Let me clean my shoes, because I've been walking in them through some dirt. So let me clean my shoes. So that's direct action. Very simple, low barrier, doesn't take too much time, doesn't take too much effort, and it reaffirms my ability to take action despite the symptoms. Then later, I go and write. So you have to think of what is it for you? What is direct action that you can take right now? Maybe as soon as this video ends, what is direct action that you can take to reaffirm your ability to take action despite the symptoms? So yeah, friends, bringing together wisdom from Montenegro and Japan, Morita therapy, and there is no specific school of thought that gave birth to the metaphor from the beginning, but conflict with reality basically is what we are talking about. Don't be in conflict with reality. That doesn't mean that you will not change, that you cannot change, and that you will not improve the subjective experience of your life, but you cannot move forward being in conflict with reality. So take direct action as soon as this video ends. Identify direct action that you can take that will reaffirm your ability of taking action despite the symptoms. And remember, if your grandma had balls, she would be called grandpa.